Hey everyone, welcome back to Bring to Light, a podcast where we bring tough conversations into the light. Why are you laughing at me? Why are you laughing at me? Are you want me to go again?
I'm not laughing at you. No, that's good.
You laughed in the middle of it.
I think we're both a little uncomfortable going into these conversations because they're uncomfortable. Like you just said, they're hard. And it's tough for us to prepare and to get into this difficult space. We're like purposely seeking discomfort. So it makes sense that this isn't easy for us. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, today's is a tough one. I think we took a little bit longer to meditate on this episode and how we would share this information. With that said, today's episode is about cholesterol and meat and how you shouldn't fear these things.
You shouldn't fear God's creation, food that He made for us to eat, very nourishing food that He made for us to eat, like we talked about in the last episode. Real food, one ingredient foods. They're full of nutrients and minerals like meat, veggies, fruit. God made those for us to nourish our bodies, but also to glorify Him by enjoying that creation. And our culture tells us a very different narrative, that we should fear meat because cholesterol causes heart disease, and this diet's good for you, this one's good for you, this one isn't. And there's just a lot of extremes in the health world that we want to kind of debunk all of them.
We sure are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where do you want to start?
Wherever you want to start.
You mentioned this, but what does the Bible say about meat? I've got a really good one here from Genesis 9:3. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I give you the green plants, I now give you everything. Yeah, that's a great one.
I also want to bring up Romans 14:1-3. It says, accept other believers who are weak in faith and don't argue with them about what they think is right or wrong. And I need to be reminded of that more often, because I can be really quick to judge someone else for eating a certain way. And I think the only right way is the way that our Creator intended things to be. And not like, oh, veganism is terrible and carnivore is terrible, or like animal-based is the right way, because we eat animal-based. And the truth is, everyone's body is very different, and everyone has a different, anatomy and genetics, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there that like we don't understand and never will understand, and science is trying to make sense of all of these complex creations that God made. And the truth is, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Right? These are things that only God knows. And all we can do is pray to Him and ask Him to give us wisdom on what He wants us to do, what the right thing is to do. And I think we both personally feel really good when we eat meat. We also eat vegetables, but very little of them. And we feel good. We've personally healed, like we talked about in the last 2 episodes, from eating a lot of meat and fat. And I feel really safe that that's what God wants me to do, and that's what's good for my body.
Yeah.
Someone else may feel better on a different diet. And, like this verse says, we need to accept other believers, and we don't need to argue with them about what they think is right or wrong, which is not what we're doing here. We're not arguing that your diet or your lifestyle or anything is right or wrong. We're just trying to make you believe the truth that God doesn't want you to be afraid of anything. Anything.
That you shouldn't fear real food.
Yeah, that He created.
He created.
And the Bible says 365 times, a reminder for every day of the year, that you shouldn't be afraid, that you don't need to fear. And I think our culture is scaring a lot of us into believing that meat is bad, meat causes cancer, meat causes heart disease. And I just want to give you some peace around that, that you can eat meat. Not all meat is equal. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be afraid. And whatever you do with your body, you should be thankful for it. This goes into another verse. Where is that? I thought I put it in here. Okay, yeah. 1 Timothy 4:3. They forbid people to marry and order them to abstain from certain foods which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and who know the truth. So I go about everything that I put in my body and on my body as something that I'm thankful for. And I think that having that perspective changes the way that stuff affects you on a cellular level. So being thankful for everything that you're given, the good and the bad, and using it and you and your body and your life to glorify God. There's no way that it can hurt you if you're doing it for His glory.
Absolutely. Yeah, our society fears meat a lot. I think modern medicine really vilifies LDL as being the bad guy. They talk a lot about good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and good cholesterol is HDL. Why are you shaking your head at me?
Because it's so stupid. This idea of like, this cholesterol is good, this cholesterol is bad. Like, what? Also, I don't know that we even wrote this down in our notes, but our liver and our body produces most of the cholesterol that's in our blood. I think only like 20% of it is dietary.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to start that part over. Okay. Our society really seems to fear meat, and I think a lot of this comes from the medical industry. Modern medicine vilifies LDL as being bad cholesterol, and they say that HDL is good cholesterol. And so they're trying to make a bad guy out of one particular form of cholesterol and say that it's the primary cause of atherosclerosis, which is plaque buildup inside of your arteries. So we'll talk a little bit about what some more recent studies, some more holistic studies have discovered as being the primary cause of that, which leads to heart disease and heart attacks. So part of the fear here is this is one of the largest biological killers of American citizens. So approximately 660,000 deaths every year from heart disease, which is wild. That's more than cancer. And so I think there is a little bit of a reason to want to seek out and understand what's causing that, just given that so many people will get heart disease in their lives. So part of this hard conversation, we want to share some of what we've learned, some of what we discovered. So hopefully we can help get rid of that fear and give our listeners a better understanding of what the real cause of that is. So a little history lesson. In the 1970s, we saw a huge uptick in heart disease, and a bunch of studies were started to look into why this was caused. It was huge panic at the time. We're seeing a lot of more people start to die from heart disease.
It's not that long ago.
It's not that long ago. So that's something else that I think we should chat about, maybe briefly, which is humans have been eating meat since humans have been around.
Yeah.
Right. I think one of the arguments is that humans haven't been eating meat in the quantities that they are, and that we're suddenly eating more meat as Americans, which is why Americans are getting heart disease at such a high rate compared to every other country in the world.
Yeah.
I think nothing else is further from the truth. In fact, if you look at studies that show the change in diets of Americans, what really has changed since the 1970s? Well, we got fast food. Fast food didn't really exist.
McDonald's.
It didn't really exist until the 60s.
Yeah.
It started growing. There started being significantly more chain restaurants and packaged food. So grocery stores went from selling.
Actually, the first McDonald's opened in 1955.
Yeah. So I guess the first McDonald's, but the chain started spreading in the 60s, and we didn't start seeing that affect people's bodies until the 70s.
20 years later.
Yeah, 15 years later, we start seeing people dying of heart disease for the first time.
Interesting.
So, and it's not just McDonald's, but it's also a huge uptick in packaged food in the grocery store.
Coca-Cola, candy.
Yeah. Coca-Cola's been around forever.
White bread? When was white bread? Let's see.
I mean, white bread as a thing has been around forever, but I think what you mean is
like the process, like
white flour.
Our grandmas, made white bread at home.
Yeah.
And that stuff was great. Good for you.
Yeah, eating sourdough at home is very different from what you can buy in the grocery store. What's that brand?
Like Miss Baird's? I think of Miss Baird's when I think of the really processed stuff.
It's hard even with that to pinpoint exactly when.
Yeah, because the ingredients could have changed. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, really the largest change since the 1970s is our access and the availability to process convenience foods. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't the case prior to the 50s, prior to the mid 60s.
Yeah.
Everything was home cooked. You would go to your local butcher, you would get meat.
Most women were stay-at-home wives and moms.
Yeah, and they would prepare meals.
And homemade.
Yeah.
Homemade is like rare these days, You're like, oh, I homemade this thing. And they're like, whoa. You made this whole pie by yourself.
So
you didn't buy the crust at the grocery store. Like it's rare because it's so much easier. Time is like the thing that we're all fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 1970s, we see this huge uptick in heart disease, and several studies went into progress to try to understand what was causing heart disease. And what these studies found is that a lot of people having heart attacks and dying from heart disease had high cholesterol. And so they believed that this was the cause. And I think what we'll get into in this episode a little bit is that this was really more of a correlation and not a causation, meaning that they were seeing these high levels of cholesterol in these people, but that wasn't what was causing the heart disease. It was the body's response to that form of stress. So this is kind of like saying that cops are the ones committing all of the crimes because they're at every crime scene. It's not really looking at the true issue, which is there are criminals committing crimes and cops show up at every crime scene. So I think that's the distinction. I just want to give that little analogy.
So you're saying cholesterol's there, but it's not what's causing the heart disease.
That's right. Yeah, cholesterol is present in the body when you're.
So are many other things.
Yeah, but I mean, what's perceived to be elevated cholesterol levels can be present in the body when your body is attempting to remediate this form of stress.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll get into that in just a little bit, but I think we should chat about some of the motivation. If this isn't the killer, why do doctors, why does the medical industry?
If meat isn't bad for you, if high cholesterol is actually good.
Yeah.
Which I feel like such a outsider weirdo saying that in today's society, like meat's good for you. I have high cholesterol and it's great, which I do. I have very high cholesterol and so does Nathan.
Yeah.
And we feel great.
Yeah. And have seen dramatic healing in our lives. I've been dealing with autoimmunity issues through the form of KP on my arms and legs, and that's been healing pretty dramatically. And same with you. You've had many signs of various autoimmunity.
Eczema.
Yeah, eczemas. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, why do we vilify cholesterol, and why are we being scared? I think part of it is rooted in that misunderstanding of these studies that had very limited data in the 1970s. But I think part of it is also influenced by a very dominating and maybe significantly too powerful pharmaceutical industry in the United States. Yeah. So one thing I want to say, we're hopefully trying to do the opposite. We're trying to make you not fear foods that come from the earth. Yeah. And I want to call out that anytime someone's trying to scare you about something, they're likely also trying to sell you the solution. They're trying to sell you whatever the cure is that will make them a lot of money. So
yeah, I think about Jesus immediately, because he doesn't want us to fear. Like, God doesn't want us to fear anything. Mm-hmm. And that's how I discern whether something is godly or ungodly. If it's not godly, I don't want it, because it's the opposite of God, which is evil, the mm-hmm. enemy, the devil. And I think about what the devil wants from us, and he wants us to be afraid, confused,
paralyzed by fear.
He
so
wants
much
us
fear
to be,
that you won't leave your house, you won't do anything, you won't see your neighbors, you won't go to your church.
You won't enjoy God's beautiful creation that is the most delicious. Who doesn't like a steak? Like a steak and butter. Come on, like that is the most all creation is beautiful and perfect, but yeah, I think of, like, is this something that God would want me to feel? And Jesus is just so loving and accepting, and he would never ever make you fear anything, mm-hmm. right? It's all love and goodness, and yeah, like he is a perfect father, right? Like, think about it, a really good parent. Would they want you to be afraid of something, even if it's bad? No, they'd say, like, it's okay, you're gonna be fine, or whatever it is, right? A good parent is not going to make you feel afraid and anxious and worried. Mm-hmm. So anytime someone's making me feel that way, whether it's our government or a doctor or whatever, it's usually that. It's usually a large institute, conglomerate company that has a motive in mm-hmm. mind that is not me or my well-being. Mm-hmm. If they're trying to scare me, I'm like, why would I trust you? You don't care about me. Like, if you care for me, you'd want me to feel safe and loved.
The question is, what is the influence? Who's influencing this study? Who's influencing
and why
this
would you want to trust anyone that wants to fear you or that wants to make you feel afraid, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would never trust a teacher or a parent or a good friend that's trying to make you feel scared. You'd be like, that's weird. You have a weird motive. Why are you trying to scare me? Right?
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit the other day. But I think a lot of people use fear because it sells. It stirs something up in us where we feel uneasy.
Our flesh we're just so easily, manipulated, and we're so easily like, oh my gosh, that's so scary, right?
Yeah, that's so scary. Now I'm angry and I want to take action about this thing.
We want to protect ourselves.
Yeah. So anytime fear is used in marketing, it's usually not true. There's usually something behind that. Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to kind of hash through right now are some of these scare tactics really true, mm-hmm. or is there a motivation behind it? And so this may not come as a shock. This may shock other people, but cholesterol medication, which is known as statins, they're the second most prescribed drug in the United States, and it's $1 trillion industry. And if you have a product that is worth trillions of dollars, $1 trillion a year, why would you want to stop that? How do you stop that? How do you stop a company, a corporation, mm-hmm. from having vested interest in that? Because maybe people will try to stop it, or maybe there are people in the company who have raised concerns, but you really can't stop a corporation because there are too many people involved that anytime someone tries to point out an issue, they're fired from the company, right? So we get in these states where these corporations have vested interests in things that affect human biology. So one of the craziest things about statins is they're prohibiting your body from producing cholesterol naturally. We talked about dietary cholesterol has been found to only contribute to about 10 to 20% of the cholesterol levels in your body. We'll link those studies in the show notes. But statins are prohibiting your body from producing cholesterol at the cellular level. And they're causing a chemical dependency on this drug. So when you start taking statins, there's no plan. Your doctor doesn't give you a plan to roll off of them. It's a dependence for the rest of your life. And maybe some people are able to escape that, but it's certainly not what's prescribed. They're saying you're going to be taking this until the day you die.
And it's not addressing
what's actually causing the issue.
Yes.
It's just causing your body to deteriorate at a cellular level.
And
instead.
Causing your body to stop doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like what it's naturally doing. Where Western medicine is just constantly interfering with the body's natural ability to heal.
Yep. That's exactly right. So why do we produce cholesterol at a cellular level? There are many roles of cholesterol in the body. Your body uses that to build cell membranes. Your body uses cholesterol to produce and manage hormone levels in your body. It also aids in your metabolism, and it's essential to your body's vitamin D production. So very essential for multiple systems in your body.
Brain function.
Yeah, hormones and hormone balancing is essential to brain function. It's just wild to me that you would want to stop what your body is doing at a cellular level.
It's doing that for a reason.
And it's not like it's only doing that when you're sick. It's doing that from the moment you're born, right? So, yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. It really strikes a chord in me. It makes me feel uneasy that this is being pushed. It's the second most sold drug in the United States.
And I understand why a lot of our friends and family might fear meat. It's scary because so many people, so many Americans specifically, are dying from heart disease.
Yeah.
We're believing what our doctors are telling us. We're trusting in our government and our doctors when they tell us meat causes heart disease. Don't, limit your egg intake and your meat intake. And, if your cholesterol is really high, you need the statin so that you don't die. And it's scary and we're falling for it, and it's not helping this vicious cycle. Things aren't getting any better.
Yeah.
The numbers aren't lowering. And so I just encourage people to maybe wonder, is my doctor saying the truth? Is that true? Maybe I should believe a different narrative that isn't scaring me, that doesn't involve me taking a synthetic drug that has probably a zillion side effects and is suppressing my body's natural ability to heal. I just think that we should all be questioners.
Yeah.
That's Nathan and I are naturally that way. We're just constantly like, is this true? Like, what's the motive here? What is it that you want from me? What are the other possibilities? Let's just think about those. And I think that's what we're doing right now is just, maybe cholesterol isn't the cause of heart disease.
Yeah. Even if many doctors didn't have a financial incentive to prescribe these drugs, which many of them do, but even if they didn't, we have to also understand the schedules of doctors, and many of them don't have the ability to read tons of research papers in this particular area, given that many of them are general practitioners, and their level of understanding for this one particular area, may not be incredibly in depth because of a time constraint, right? If you're serving a bunch of patients, do you have the time to go read these studies in your free time when you're working a 12-hour shift multiple times a week?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's solely like a they're being evil.
Yeah,
kind of thing,
I don't think that every doctor like knows the truth and they're like, haha, I'm gonna tell someone to be afraid of me, even though I know it's really good for them, and I'm gonna prescribe them this terrible drug that might do more harm than good. I don't think that they all. I think they're just not aware, and they're just doing what they were taught in medical school, what they paid a lot of money for, and they just believe in the system. But we need to question things and just be open-minded to other possibilities. And I think that's a good segue into why I personally believe that cholesterol is good for you and not bad from personal experience. Both Nathan and I have a lot of friends that have healed on an all-meat diet, that not all meat, but they eat plenty of meat for every meal, specifically red meat, and they feel good. We have a friend that's pregnant right now that's been craving a lot of red meat, which makes me so happy. I hope that she's indulged in those cravings because that's her body telling her what she needs. I've just heard way too many testimonies of people healing from autoimmunity, from gut issues, from so many things, mental illness, anxiety, depression, by following a diet that's heavy in meat, dairy, raw milk. So many testimonies of people that have cured their eczema or psoriasis, gut issues, Crohn's disease, IBS, by just eating things that we've been eating forever, that our grandmas ate. They'd go out to the farm and milk the cow and eat the cow and the chicken, and they were healthy and they lived long. And there are just too many testimonies, too many healing stories. There is a Heart and Soil documentary that I will link in the show notes later called Nourished. It's a 20-minute documentary. I highly recommend you all watch it. It's just really beautiful, especially if you're a woman that wants to get pregnant someday. It is about animal-based pregnancies, and they show placentas of a woman that eats a lot of meat and organ meats, and it's just so beautiful. And they talk about how nutrient dense meat is and how good it is for us. So I'll link that in the show notes for y'all to watch. But also, I have a personal testimony that I can't ignore and makes me believe that cholesterol isn't the cause of heart disease here. So before Nathan and I changed our diet like 2 years ago.
Yeah. About a year and a half.
Mid 2021.
September, October of 2021.
Before we changed our diet, as we've said a zillion times, we ate the standard American diet.
2022.
I don't know. It hasn't been that long, but it feels like forever.
September, October of 2022. So okay. Just a little over a year and a half.
Yeah, we changed our diet dramatically. We ate out a lot. I'd get Panera all the time.
Before changing
our diet, we'd get Pete Terry's. We ate out almost every single meal.
Yep.
From high school, like age 13, 14. I guess our whole lives, we ate a lot of processed food.
Yeah.
And when I got my first big girl job, age 23, 24, through my health insurance and through my job, I was able to get a metabolic lab done for free.
They wanted you to do it to lower your insurance premium.
Yes.
They said, if you take this test, we'll make your insurance cheaper. So,
which was fun. So I was like, cool, I'll do this thing. And they prick your finger and they draw some blood and they test a lot of metabolic biomarkers. So they tested, this was in, I don't remember exactly the dates, but I will put my labs on a video for you guys to see what my labs were like when I was eating junk food and what my labs are like now, so that y'all can have a visual, and you'll have the real date, the date and the exact number of my cholesterol. So I did the lab at my job when I was eating, gas station cupcakes midnight and eating a lot of junk. not any whole foods like we've talked about. And my cholesterol was really good according to my doctor. My cholesterol, I think, was in like the low 100s. And this is when I had the most symptoms. This is when I was really fatigued, stomach problems, tons of stuff like we've talked about in the past 2 episodes, so I won't go over it again. But I was not feeling good. I was not in optimal health, yet my cholesterol was, according to my doctor. They were like, everything looks good, your cholesterol is good. And so I got a clean bill of health, a little green check on that lab, and they lowered my insurance premium. So I was like, cool, I'm healthy. Nothing's wrong with my diet. And then I changed my diet, not that dramatically. It happened slowly over time to just eating more vegetables. I don't even think we were eating a lot of meat at the time. It was just like sweet potatoes, eggs in the morning, chicken, fish. I was eating lean, more like Mediterranean diet, I think. Turkey, we were making a lot of turkey meatballs. So very low cholesterol meats.
Yeah.
But I just switched to eating real food. No more like Pop-Tarts for breakfast. No more frozen breakfast sandwiches, the Jimmy brand. I don't know what they're called.
Dean.
Yeah, Jimmy Dean. Mm-hmm. We were just like making our own real food now. We were actually cooking and spending time in our kitchen rather than just heating up some frozen meal. And I did the test, I think 6 months or a year later. Again, the same test, and my cholesterol went way up. Like sky high. And the first thing that the nurse said to me when I met with her to go over my labs was, have you been eating any like ice cream or pizza, like fried foods? Like, is your diet really heavy in those? Because it looks like it. And I was mind blown because my diet used to consist of that, no longer did. But she believed that because my cholesterol was high, that I was eating pizza. I was like, I haven't had ice cream in forever, or pizza, or fried foods. Like, why are my labs so bad now, even though I'm eating real food?
Yeah.
And she recommended that I cut out processed food, which I had already been doing. So that was really frustrating. And for a long time, my focus was on getting my cholesterol back down.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know what, like I wasn't going to change my diet. I knew that I was eating good food.
Yeah.
And I felt better. All of my symptoms went away. But the one thing that dramatically changed in a negative way, according to the doctors, was my cholesterol.
Yeah. But you're seeing autoimmunity signs as well as anxiety disappear on the new diet.
Yeah.
And
this new diet shouldn't even be called a diet. It's just like what real food is, what we should eat as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only bad thing is that your cholesterol has gone up. And I think they only measured total cholesterol. They weren't even looking for LDL versus HDL.
They did both.
They did both?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And my HDL was not great either. It was very low. So that didn't make any sense to me. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Do I need to cut out, do I need to stop eating eggs for breakfast? Whatever. So that went on for a long time. And then recently, a Harvard study came out about Oreos. And that was the last piece of evidence that opened my mind to see all of this stuff that I've been learning about cholesterol over the past couple of years. It just helped me see clearly what causes high cholesterol, what causes low cholesterol, and made me feel really confident in saying that cholesterol is not bad for you.
Yeah.
So where is this? So this Oreo study showed that moral of the story is that sugar lowers cholesterol, which makes sense to me because I was eating a ton of sugar for every meal, and that's when my cholesterol was very low and healthy, according to my doctors. I cut out all sugar, all processed sugar. I was only eating fruit and honey and maple syrup, like limited amounts. And that's when my cholesterol skyrocketed. So what this Harvard study shows, really interesting. We will also link this in the show notes along with a video that breaks down the study. What they did was they took a group, I think a lot of people, it'll say in the study, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, with really high cholesterol. And for 16 days, they gave each person in the study 12 Oreos a day. That's a lot of Oreos. But probably, I was probably eating more than 12 Oreos a day for a long, like I remember always having Oreos or Cheez-Its or tons of processed foods in our pantry. Nutty bars, honey buns, like tons of stuff that's probably just as sugary as Oreos. So I don't think Oreos are special here. I don't think they're like the key to lowering cholesterol. That is not what this study is trying to say. Like, do not fall for this scam that Oreos lower cholesterol and that's why you should be eating Oreos.
Yeah, Oreo is probably going to try to spin this as Oreos are now heart healthy. And you're going to see some advertising on Oreo packages soon. Don't buy that.
Oreos are not heart healthy. Look at the ingredients. They are man-made food. God did not create Oreos to nourish our bodies. Doesn't mean that you can't enjoy an Oreo every now and then, but I believe that Oreos are the cause of heart disease. So not just Oreos, but all processed food.
So we're seeing massive reductions in LDL from consuming significantly more processed food and sugars.
So this particular study, they gave 12 Oreos a day for 16 days to these people. And their cholesterol went from 384, which is really high. I think my cholesterol is in like the 240s, and that's considered like scary. Like my doctor would put me on a statin. So 384 is really high cholesterol. And in 16 days, that 384 cholesterol went down to 111, 111, which is really, that's not low. That's like healthy cholesterol. If you have cholesterol of 111, your doctor's like, woo, you're doing good. Keep eating what you're eating. And if they saw your cholesterol at 384, they'd be like, this is scary. You need to cut out red meat. This clearly shows the 71% reduction in cholesterol in just 16 days of eating Oreos proves that lower cholesterol does not equal better health.
I think we'll talk about just a little bit why it's still a bad thing that you're eating Oreos and you only have 111 LDL. I think the key, what we're seeing here is that you can still develop heart disease. We're just seeing a reduction in blood cholesterol.
I don't think anyone would argue. I hope not, but these people that are eating 12 Oreos a day, do you think those people are healthier than the people that have high cholesterol but aren't eating Oreos? There's no way.
I think this is really it's tricking your body in a sense. It's kind of like taking NyQuil and seeing your temperature drop. That doesn't mean you're not sick, right? Let's compare this real quick. One last thing on this study. This was compared with 6 months of a 20 milligram statin, which decreased LDL from 421 to 284. So only a 32.5% reduction on 6 months of a statin.
So Oreos in 16 days can decrease your LDL by 71%.
They're twice as effective as 6 months on a statin.
That does not mean that Oreos are good.
That doesn't mean that either of those things are good for your body.
That to me says that sugar is responsible for healthy cholesterol.
Like I said, it can trick your body into thinking, or it can trick a doctor into thinking that your cholesterol levels are healthy when really you have other dysfunction going on at a cellular level. So
I have high cholesterol at the moment because I don't eat Oreos, I don't eat fast food. And if I went to a Western medical hospital, a doctor, and they saw my LDL, they'd probably say, your LDL is very high. You have very high cholesterol. You should cut back on meat. You should cut back on eggs. And maybe they'd even consider putting me on a statin because they're worried that I'd have heart disease. I could leave the doctor's office, completely ignore what they told me, eat 12 Oreos a day for 16 days, and then go back, and the doctor would be like, you're super healthy. I doubt any of you would agree that that's true.
We laugh a little bit about this, and I think most people would agree that sugar is not good for you. But we're seeing this ideology permeate more and more into mainstream media when we talk about heart healthy foods. Like Cheerios has been one that's been advertised for a long time as being heart healthy. You should start your day with a bowl of Cheerios, which couldn't be further from the truth. And yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute. But we're starting to see this same line of thinking permeate into how we talk about heart healthy foods. There was this food compass diagram, which we'll show on the video, by Tufts University. It was a study about heart healthy foods, and in which they rank things like Skittles significantly higher as being more heart healthy for you than an egg.
Yeah, they mark Lucky Charms. It's also interesting that it's like very specific.
They use name brands, yeah.
And that's because there's an incentive here. They're partnering with these really large corporations.
Yep.
So they specifically say that Lucky Charms, not just cereal, and Cocoa Puffs are better than an egg. And it's just mind-blowing to see this study, these pictures of...
And they are basing this solely on looking at LDL cholesterol. They're not looking at this from a holistic picture of what is this doing to your body when you consume it. They're only saying that because some other study has proved that LDL is bad for you, that by the same extension of that, we can say that these foods are better for you because they don't cause LDL to increase.
Yeah.
So it's taking a whole nother study, which was not, it's basically taking a study out of context. And even then, that study wasn't fully, it didn't look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
It was very limited in what they tried to prove.
I'm looking at the food compass, and it says Tufts University Food Compass, real food versus ultra processed food. And it's has a little, what's it called? Like a legend, showing green foods to be encouraged, yellow foods to be moderated, and red foods to be minimized. And all the greens are, I don't think these are bad for you. It's like almond milk, yogurt, non-fat milk. Oh my gosh. But then the fourth...
They can. What's common in all these things is added sugar.
The fourth one says chocolate milk made from sugar-free syrup with non-dairy milk.
Yeah.
So they're saying that fake milk, soy milk, is better for you than turkey or egg whites or beef or eggs, which are all in the red. And then in the middle, to be moderated, says meatless meatballs, meatless luncheon slice. What does that even mean? Meatless breakfast link patty or slice, chicken breast grilled without sauce, skin not eaten.
Not eaten?
Yeah, skin not eaten. Saying not to eat the skin.
Yeah,
beaver, cooked beaver is to be what? Yeah, it's so weird. It's showing, it's so backwards. The processed foods are at the top.
They're basing this solely on the LDL, the effects of these foods on LDL cholesterol, which is so flawed. They're ignoring sugar, which we'll get into that here in just a second. But yeah, cholesterol, based on more extensive recent research, is not what causes heart disease. And we mentioned correlation does not mean causation. And we've seen a lot of, I'll just blatantly say propaganda around.
I'm mind blown by this stuff every time I see it. I'm looking at this chart right now. And Frosted Mini Wheats.
Yeah.
Raisin Bran. Honey Bunches of Oats with vanilla bunches. Special K Cinnamon Pecan. Fruit Loops Cinnabon, which is a whole company with tons of products.
Yeah.
Cinnabon is better for you than an egg fried in butter and ground beef cooked.
Yeah.
Like, what even? How do people believe this stuff? And I feel this, I'm getting judgmental again. I'm sorry, but it just blows my mind. Like, no, these are not real foods. This this is so backwards. I hear this all the time. Like, whatever the government or whatever someone's pushing on you, like, do the opposite. And I think that's how we try to live our lives, not because someone told us to do that, but naturally we just are questioners. We're rebellious.
Yeah.
We don't like authority. We follow God's law, not man's law. And I just, you're pushing frosted mini wheats on me.
A lot of different propaganda. I think this is one form of propaganda because there is monetary influence infiltrating what is called science, and it is not science if you're setting out to prove a pre-planned
manipulated
agenda,
data.
Yeah, before you even start the experiment. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between an observable hypothesis and we've already made a conclusion and we're going to manipulate whatever we can, frame a study however
to
we
sell
can
the Oreos
to prove our pre-planned agenda. So we're seeing lots of different forms of propaganda. There are tons. I mean, we see it all over Netflix as well. And there's a whole Netflix documentary.
Multiple
documentaries. Yeah, it's like there's a new one every few months, it feels like. But one of the big ones is the Blue Zones one, which we watched when it came out. And I think we bought it. I think we bought into that. And
let's not completely like negate the whole Blue Zone idea, because there are a lot of good habits and teachings that we can learn from cultures that live in Blue Zones. Mm-hmm. They really care about community. They get outside. They move a lot. There's a lot that we can learn from everyone and everying, no matter what you eat or what you believe in. So there is a lot of truth in the Blue Zones, but I believe that the dude that discovered this idea of Blue Zones he's a huge advocate for plant-based diets.
Yeah. And they try to sell you that portion of Blue Zones while completely neglecting many of the other facts that they do eat meat. They do eat red meat. Yes, they eat a lot of seafood, but red meat is still a staple of the diets in almost all of the Blue Zones. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of why these people in these Blue Zones live significantly longer is they move their bodies. We
may never know, right? Like, this is something that I always bring up when talking about health. Like, it's a holistic effort, meaning it's not just what you eat, right? Like, your diet is what you consume in every way, what you put on your skin, what you hear through your ears, what you see through your eyes, the words that you speak, the words that you hear, your beliefs, like what's in your heart. Like, your body is a full complex system. It's not just what you put in your stomach, right? Like how you move your body, the way that you love other people. If you hold a lot of resentment or you can't forgive other people, like that will make you sick. Anger, fear, anxiety, depression, like these things cause disease of all kinds.
Yep. You're totally right. Yeah. I think the reason I call that out as propaganda is because they focus solely on the diet rather than looking at a holistic picture. And even then, they are misleading you on the exact diet. There still is red meat being consumed. But I think the core here is this is another correlation, not causation thing, where if you do look at it from a holistic perspective, they have stronger communities than many other places in the world. They're getting significantly more sunlight and time out in nature than the vast majority of the world, and they move their bodies at a higher rate than the vast majority of the world, especially compared to Americans.
Yeah, Americans are inside. There's some crazy statistic I read recently. I'll try to find it, but about how children these days spend like more than half of their day looking at a screen and never get any kind of real sunlight. They don't go outside for days. It's really sad.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, I just want to say they're trying to frame vegetables as being the answer there, but that's just one small portion of a healthy diet. It's also one small portion. The diet is one small portion of looking at holistically how these people live. Because like you said, many things go into their lifestyle, and diet is something that they don't even really focus on. There isn't like a
Yeah.
someone trying to sell you a fat loss supplement or a parasite
Oh my
cleanse
gosh.
or
Yeah.
you have to only juice or what. No one's trying to sell you any
There's no
particular
extreme.
diet.
They're just
They
living
don't
their
even
life.
focus on it. It's just, this is what we cook meals at home together, and we go on walks together, and we do those things. And I really think that's what's key, is they're focusing on eating real foods from the earth, not processed food. And to say that, oh, it's only because they don't eat red meat, that's not true.
Yeah.
They do consume red meat.
Yeah.
Maybe it's at a lower rate than many other parts of the world, but we're looking at how they live their life holistically.
Yeah, there are two areas that the blue zones like to leave out. Two blue zones that the blue zone documentaries often leave out.
Yeah, because they consume red meat. They are omitted from the Netflix documentaries.
The plant-based propaganda. So a blue zone is Hong Kong. I'm going to read, I pulled this from an article that I'll link down below, but it says, for the second consecutive year, Hong Kong has the longest lived population in the world. They are officially the world's foremost blue zone. Men are living to 81.3, whilst women live to the ripe old age of 87.3. Residents eat 664 grams of meat per day, which equals 1.5 pounds of meat per day. People in Hong Kong are eating a crap ton of meat, and they're living really long. Why do they leave that out of the
You and I might not even consume 1.5 pounds of meat every day.
And we eat quite a bit.
Yeah, meat is a substantial portion of pretty much all of every meal we eat. And I don't even know that we individually eat 1.5 pounds of meat per day, because we do mix in other vegetables, mostly root vegetables and fruit.
So hopefully this Hong Kong statistic gives you some peace around, there are people that are living really long. That's an argument that a lot of our friends and family say. They're like, well, you feel really good eating a lot of meat now, but 20 years from now, you might have heart disease. And I don't believe that. I choose not to believe that.
The other one is Iceland. This was also pulled from an article. In 2019, the life expectancy in Iceland was 81 years for men and 84.2 years for women. An Icelandic diet consists of big breakfasts eaten at home instead of on the go, fresh seafood, and quality meat and dairy products. So very similar to what we try to eat.
This just reminded me, it said dairy products. Raw milk is not allowed to be sold in grocery stores in the US. I wonder why that is. Other countries don't have that restriction. They are allowed to sell all of their produce, their farm.
It also can't even be sold at a farmer's market in the United States unless you pre-order.
Yeah. So there's so many weird regulations that our government is getting, they're just like getting in the way of us eating food that our grandmothers had readily available to them, like in their backyard or from their local market. And I wonder why that is. The argument someone could say here is, well, they're protecting us. They're trying to help us because they know that that's bad. But I hope that everything.
Many other areas that they aren't trying to do that.
Yeah, if a I think about this all the time. If doctors truly cared about my well-being, why wouldn't they suggest things that are actually helpful? Like,
you'd think they'd want to find the root cause of whatever the issue is and try to help you address that root cause, which could be environmental, it could be dietary, it could be
so many things.
It could be something else causing stress in your life. You know, that could be leading to some kind of autoimmunity reaction, some kind of disease.
I think doctors just don't have the time and the space to actually get to know, and no one knows you like you know your body, right? And so why do we go to these so-called experts that don't know anything about us? They don't know if I just had a huge stressful argument that morning before I had an anxiety attack, or they don't know what I ate for breakfast. Like, there's just too many moving pieces.
They're encouraged to get you in and out of the door. Right? That's the other issue is a lot of times when you're talking to the actual doctor, you may only have 30 seconds or a minute if you're lucky having a conversation with them, they don't really have the space or time to get to know what the real root issue is. So
yeah, this makes me think about doctors in medical school and how long they study nutrition.
Mhm.
Like, that's a question that came to my mind, was how long do doctors study nutrition? Because medical school is a lot of years, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a lot of time. It's and
I think on average it's about 3 days.
I looked it up, and it says, although nutrition education varies by school, a 2021 survey of medical schools in the US and UK, published in the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics, found that most students receive an average of 11 hours of nutrition training throughout an entire medical program.
Yeah.
So I believe the diet is like key, like at the center. Yes, it is a holistic approach, but what you put in your body is what causes your body to live, to die, to do anything. Like, that is what our body is responding to.
Yeah, coming from an engineering background where you're dealing with functions and inputs and outputs, and the input directly affects the output, right? Anything you put into a system, if you put bad gas in your car, it's not going to run very well.
Exactly.
Right? And humans are no different. Humans are the ultimate system. We are an incredibly designed, complex system of interworking parts.
We're God's best creation.
Yeah. Yep. And I think we need to think more holistically about the input, whether that's dietary or environmental, or your community, your spirituality. I think we need to think significantly more about the whole picture rather than one particular thing. So yeah, with that, that makes me think about the Rosetto mystery. Do you want to read that one?
Yeah, I found this in an article that I will also link. And I love that this is in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. I loved that book when I read it in high school. Nathan and I are big Malcolm Gladwell fans. Yeah. So someone described in this little excerpt that I'm gonna read about. So it says, the introduction to Outliers tells a story about the town of Rosetto, Pennsylvania, where the people originally migrated from Rosetto, Italy. The people of Rosetto amazed doctors with the low occurrence of heart disease in their community. People here were more prone to die from old age than anything else. Doctors and scientists performed all kinds of tests to figure out why this was. They thought there must be something about the diet, exercise routine, or environment of the Rosettans to explain their unusually good health, but none of these hypotheses could be confirmed. They then looked at the social structure of Rosetto. Many of the residents would chat with neighbors. Sometimes 3 generations of a family would live under one roof. It seemed as though it was the sense of community and togetherness that made them live happy, long lives. I love that it says that none of the hypotheses could be confirmed. Like, all of these people probably ate maybe they ate, they didn't all eat the exact same meals every single day at the same time. They didn't all go on a walk. They probably had different habits and different things and going on in their life, and different relationships and different genetics. But the one thing that they all had in common was that they were living a long time and they loved each other. They had community. They did things together. And I think that is what I'm starting to lean more into every day, more and more, is like, what I eat, it matters, but that's not like everything.
It's just one input.
Yeah. And
this is what I was trying to get at with talking about the Blue Zone documentaries, is they focus so much on one particular thing. And even then it's kind of a stretch to make some of the claims that they're making. And they're not looking at the whole picture, and they're not, if they are, that's not what they're trying to convey. That's not the message that they're trying to instill in people who watch those documentaries. So I think community aspect, physical activity, those things are all important, but really it's the whole picture.
Yeah. I hope that everything we've talked about so far in this Rosetto study just gives you some peace around your diet. And I think the truth is, you can't go wrong with real food.
Yep.
You can't go wrong with anything that God created for us.
Mm-hmm.
And please don't be afraid, because I feel like I've lived in fear my entire life up until very recently. And God doesn't want us to be afraid. Eat good food. Eat your fruit, eat your meat, eat your vegetables. They're delicious. And think about what you're putting in your body if it's not in one of those three groups. If it is a processed food, just be mindful of your intake. Don't judge yourself. Don't, get too critical with your diet, but just
enjoy those things in moderation.
Yeah, but also know that they're addicting. So be careful, but you can't go wrong with real food. Please don't be afraid of meat. And there's so much more here, but I think that's a good part 1 to this to wrap up.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for listening to today's episode. There's still so much more that we want to talk about, so I think this will be a part 1 to cholesterol, heart disease, saturated fats, this entire conversation. We will have a part 2 next week. Thank you so much for making it all the way through. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.